Welcome everyone to my channel called Harbi Kafir, brought to you by the Dar el Harb Center for Islamic Studies and me, your host, Harbi Kafir. So however you found this channel, it's my most fervent hope you'll return to learn more about the ideology that attempts to pass itself off as the religion of peace, Islam, and how it affects us folks known in Islam as Kafirs. Robert Spencer's book, STEALTH JIHAD, released in late 2008, about 14 years ago, by Regenery Publishing, that examines the efforts adherents to Islam have been using to undermine non-Islamic Western governments and institutions for decades, is the subject of this latest episode from the Dar el Harb Center for Islamic Studies with Harbi Kafir. This book, which I was lucky enough to find as a first edition in one of our local Goodwill outlets, was written before the installation of America's first Islamic president, but is still full of annotated quotes and facts that are just as relevant all these years later during the current disastrous administration of his since elevated vice president. With the subtitle of How Radical Islam is Subverting America Without Guns or Bombs, Spencer tells readers that by exploiting help from homegrown, useful, idiot, multiculturalists, say that 3 times, and the so-called moderate Muslim groups like CARE and Impact, who, as he explains, have funneled donations to the Muslim Brotherhood and through that organization onto Hezbollah and Hamas jihadists, Islam has been allowed to ploddingly advance its Islamic agenda of supremacism and separatism through litigious efforts and coerced accommodation. So even though, as the author shows, these so-called moderate followers of the ideology of submission may not be willing to commit acts of violent jihad themselves, they're still quite willing to work towards a world Islamic hegemony in many other ways that dig at the foundations of the free world. As I read Stealth Jihad, I was given concrete examples of how accommodations for Islam erodes the freedoms of all Americans. I have said in earlier videos how a few school systems in the United States have already banned pork product from their lunchrooms to accommodate Islamicists in the region. But where I speak in generalities, Spencer gives a specific incident from September 2007 concerning a Ridgeland School District 122 in Oak Lawn, Illinois, removing all pork products from its 5 schools, thus forcing non-voluntary accommodation on young Kafirs whose parents' property taxes go to support those schools to serve the needs of the entire community, not just a segment that, by the way, has shown absolutely no desire to assimilate into the larger American society. Spencer gives this example as well as many others that tell how our educational systems are being changed to align with Sharia and to present the history of Islam in a more positive light. He also informs us on how the companies that publish American textbooks are heavily influenced by millions in Saudi oil dollars that also flow into our institutions of higher learning, hiring those type of educators who are of a like mind, as well as funding classes that denigrate Western traditions or anything positive about the American experience. So why is all this money being donated to further the Islamicization of this country and the West by moderate Muslim groups and the Saudi oil princes? Because the Quran commands it in many of its verses, like this one. Surah 9, verse 20. Those who believe and have left their homes and waged jihad with their wealth and their lives in Allah's way are of much greater worth in the sight of Allah. These are the ones who are triumphant. This, my fellow Kafirs, is stealth jihad in action. Other, even scarier aspects of stealth jihad are fleshed out by Spencer in this informative book that reads with the ease of a collection of magazine articles. He explains in detail how many aspects of life here in America have been compromised by an insidious infiltration by those who would not even be willing to act against Islamic infringements to our national security when required, including but not limited to our military. But Robert Spencer does not try to scare the jihad out of the reader to earn a quick buck. Here he lays out a logical and common sense plan to address the problems encountered by the supremacist and separatist ideology that wishes to supersede Republican democracy with its own form of elitist totalitarianism mixed with Sharia compliance and Kafir demitude. Believe it or not, folks, I grew up in a section of our country that flirted with a supremacist and separatist ideology. And I can tell you from personal experiences, it just does not work out well. I learned the lesson that separate but equal never is. So Sharia compliance should never be. Interestingly enough, the greatest U.S. president of my lifetime once embraced at least one of Spencer's suggestions, as you will see when you read Stealth Jihad, whether he was aware of it or not. But of course, that is not the only thing you will notice in hindsight as you enjoy reading this informative work of nonfiction by the same person that brought us the critical Quran from earlier this year. So if you wish to acquire more knowledge on how Islam operates in its quest for a worldwide hegemony, I can highly recommend picking up a copy of Stealth Jihad by Robert Spencer from your local used book outlet, or see if your local library has a copy to lend. Because y'all should know by now, I want you to learn as much as you can about the ideology of submission so you too can become a warner. Thank you for listening. Please leave your comments below, and remember, no Islam, my fellow Kafirs, so there is no submission.
Allah